Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday, February 18th Planning and Community Development Committee. Going to call us to order here at 9:30 a.m. and recognize that the SCRD is located on the traditional territories of the Seashell and Squamish Nations. We do have an agenda in front of us. There are no late additions. Directors or staff, is there anything else you'd like to add to our agenda today? Otherwise, I look for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Okay, thank you very much. First up, Annex A, we have Nicole Huska, consultant for Secret Cove Heights Development. She is going to be brought into the meeting here to give us an update on Secret Cove Heights forward-looking proposal.
Hello, Chair and Board. I am coming to you from Wilkwai in the traditional and unceded territories of the Shisha people, otherwise known as Half Moon Bay. I don't have anything really to present. The two-pager is included in your agenda. I'm just here for any questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Huska. Directors, do you have, can I have a motion to receive the delegation materials as well as our reports and minutes? Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Thank you very much. Directors, do you have any questions for Ms. Huska? Otherwise, this is an update. This will be going to staff and we will be seeing it at a future date. Director Lee.
Thank you. I'm not entirely familiar with the 337. So my question was, subdivision zone is currently I and it's changing to G. What's the difference between those two?
10 acres down to 5, approximately. So, or 1.75 hectare for the G.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions? I see nothing from directors. I look forward to seeing this coming back from staff. Thank you for being here today, Ms. Huska, and have a good day.
Be well, everyone. Take care.
All right, moving on to Annex B, Cooper's Green Hall Replacement Project, Community Engagement Session, Summary of Feedback. I see GM Hall's name on this one, so I assume he will be speaking to it.
Thank you, Chair. By way of brief introduction, in late January, SCRD's contracted architect, in coordination with staff, conducted an online community engagement session about the Cooper's Green Hall replacement project. The session was supported with webpage information about the project and a questionnaire, which was open for the week following. The public participation activity provided information, invited questions, and sought feedback on the project, including specific aspects like siting, budget, and design. Results are reported as part of today's agenda, and the project is included in the preliminary 2021 budget as a placeholder with consideration planned for round 2. Staff would be pleased to answer any questions about the engagement session or to receive direction for information to be brought to round 2 budget to assist the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, GM Hall. That was going to be my very first question, was there any specific direction you're looking for from this, noting that, you know, it's received for information. So Director McMahon, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that that was a really good engagement session. I attended. I found it interesting. It kept moving quite briskly, but at the same time, I think all the questions got answered in a useful way. So that was really interesting and very helpful. So, yay.
Director Hiltz.
I'll say another yay for that public engagement. I think it was nicely balanced. I did feel that the architect did present their bias and interest in moving that project forward. That was there, and I believe GM Hall presented a nice balance for the SCRD about the various components. I did have one question. when I went back over the presentation information, and I was looking at the floor plan. So I'm just a question about the floor plan. The kitchen is separated from the hall. And I hadn't looked at that closely. And then I started thinking about just about every community hall I've ever been into, the kitchen is attached to the large space. And I just started to look at the flow through that. I was just wondering how I wasn't part of that thing that came up with that plan. So was there any background on how that floor plan came to be in terms of like the logistics of the flow? That was the only kind of thing that I really hadn't paid attention to before.
Good question. GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director, for the question. I think this would be an example of an area where if more detailed information is requested as part of a decision-making process, staff could bring it back. The project is long enough in the tooth that I can't recall all of the specific considerations that went into that design. So I might need to do some research, but I do recall that outside access from the kitchen so that it can engage with outdoor events was one of the design preferences that emerged through the public participation design activities that took place in 2018. Thanks.
Thank you. I believe there was also, I recall reading somewhere, some consideration that groups may want to use the kitchen, but not the hall. So that would allow for a separation of those spaces to be used separately without interfering with each other. Director Kroll.
Thank you, Chair. No, I just wanted to sort of concur that when I looked at the floor plans, Director Hiltz's comments were really sort of sprung to my mind that the kitchen was in an awkward position. Just from my own experience with catering and hotel work and sort of design functions, it just seemed that, traffic flows with people crossing to washrooms from a hall space or outdoor and crossing the kitchen space just seemed an awkward thing. So I certainly questioned it as well.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. In the document that we have in front of us, the summary, it talks about the boat ramp and parking and indicated that they consider the boat ramp and parking issues a project weakness. How are they going to be addressed in moving this forward?
Good question. GM Hall.
Thank you for the question. There's further work on just about every aspect of the project because it's not fully resolved. And one of the areas that staff know that more work is needed, and certainly this was reinforced by the work at the end of January and early this month, is further civil work around the design of the parking areas. We do have permission from the Ministry of Transportation that was granted some years ago at the outset of this project to expand parking, but the fine-grained detail about how it's organized and the geometries and things like that are something that staff heard needs more work as the project proceeds, if it proceeds. Thanks.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
I believe this is the first public facility we've been involved in designing since the rec center and the swimming pool and seashell. Would that be correct?
Approximately. I mean, there was some reconfiguration of Grantham's Hall completed as well, and I apologize, I can't recall the chronology of Eric Cardinal Hall versus the rec facilities. It might have been coincident or just after.
Yeah, I think Eric Cardinal Hall was, well, it's right around the same time anyway. I thought it was 2005. I don't know if we have a checklist of things that we look for in a project. Things like standards for green buildings. Or another consideration, because I was on the Gibson's Library Board for a long time, that building, even though it was not large enough at the time it opened, was never designed for expansion. And it's very, very frustrating to get stuck with a facility that cannot easily be altered or expanded as needs change. I realize that in this particular case, probably less crucial, but it's something to bear in mind when we're doing these kind of projects is how flexible can we be going into the future. That's just a general comment, but again, good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I know that Half Moon Bay Community Association has offered to take on the responsibility of operating the community hall. I do recall that during the public engagement session, which I did attend, it seemed to be unclear what the actual costs are going to be. So what are they actually taking on? What will be the cost of the allowance for the annual capital cost replacements, etc. I would like to see that. I mean, even though I have no say in this, I would still like to see that those costs are made pretty clear, because if a volunteer organization is taking something like this on, I know it can become quite onerous. I was involved for a number of years with a community association running a hall in my community in Calgary. And there are issues around that. And you're always having to balance off the public good versus making sure you cover your costs. So, and at times staff need to be involved, like you have to hire staff to manage some of that. So there are costs. That needs to be really clear before each party takes on a responsibility. Because at some point, if the Half Moon Bay Community Association finds it too onerous and steps down, we're stuck with it. We have it. I mean, we can't just say, no, we're not going to take this on. It would actually come back to us. So I think the more work that can be done on that part up front, I think all parties will benefit from it.
Definitely important considerations too when you look at capital savings and planning for future repairs and maintenance and stuff. I suppose the question is whether revenue that comes in from a hall is split, and what that split looks like between capital, SCRD, the group that's running the hall, things like that. But it's outside my lane, so I'm not that particularly concerned with it myself. But Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. My question's around the sea level rise. I noticed, I believe it was 3.5 meters. I don't have it in front of me that it's going to be higher. I've been surfing the web, doing my amateur sleuthing, trying to figure out how much sea rise is going to happen in the next 50 and 100 years, which of course is assuming we don't do anything, or whatever we do won't take effect soon enough. But I don't know what 3.5 meters means. Is that a 50 year? Is that a 100 year? Is that a forever? And it also said that it was built so it could be raised if necessary. And I'd like to know if that's true as well.
All right, GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. So early in this project, SCRD sought review of the flood construction level by a qualified engineer because the site is within a development permit area where that's required. And the stated flood construction level from that review is 3.6 meters. And so that's, compared to what's there, that's about 0.6 meters, about 2 feet higher than the current building. And that level of 3.6 meters is 1.9 meters above higher high water large tide. And it uses a flood construction level calculation that takes into account sea level rise of 1 meter to the year 2100 and 2 meters for the year 2200. And just as a general comment, flood construction level calculations take in large tide, sea level rise, storm surge, wave effects, and then add a nominal allowance of of 2 feet for freeboard.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Director Pratt.
Thank you, Chair Toss. I'd just like to add the comments. I'm really happy with how the event went. Was run really well by GM Hall and the consultant and the architect. One of the things I had commented already to GM Hall at agenda review was the one thing that really popped out to me in the report was the post-disaster and about the hall not being appropriate for post-disaster, which I know, I don't know if GM Hall wants to comment on this now, but an architect's view of post-disaster is different than a community's view, and that's one thing that I know a lot of members of the community are really would really like to see a gathering place in this area continue is because it does become a safe haven in event of, or a gathering place in event of a disaster, especially in that area. Otherwise, the really well attended event. I'm glad that we had it to have some further conversation about it and deal with some of the questions. Obviously, there are still some concerns and some within the community, and also some I heard loud and clear that there's still a want for a pickleball court in there, and but I'm really glad we had it and heard more feedback.
Thank you. That actually brings up a question from me for GM Hall, and my apologies for not letting you know ahead of time. With the post-disaster construction designs, options, engineering, what have you, what do we have facilities within the SCRD that are designed to post-disaster construction standards? I know you'd mentioned in agenda review that the rec centers weren't.
Not my area of expertise, unfortunately, Chair. I'd like to bring back information for the committee if I could, but yes, what I can say is post-disaster does mean a particular thing from a building design point of view, and it doesn't mean that we don't write our facilities into our disaster response and recovery plans in ways that are appropriate. So, for example, as emergency social service centers or reception centers or other types of functions like that. And certainly, if we think about community halls, they could perform that function if needed. Thanks.
Thank you, GM Hall. Director Ties.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, thank you, staff, for organizing this excellent engagement session. I think it was great. Thank you for answering my questions that I had at the time, and today the getting a little bit more detail into what flood construction level actually means. That sort of still remains one of the biggest questions for me is, if it's 1 meter by 2100 and 2 meters by 2200, that means at the highest high tide by 2200, that building is underwater. So, essentially, what is the expected lifespan of this building? And how long are we willing to have this building stick around and then to eventually be either raised, reinforced, updated, torn down? So something will need to get done. So that's the question, is how long do we want this building to be around? And I also did some research into flooding, and the idea of 1 meter by 2100 seems to be a fairly accepted estimate these days. And then after that, of course, the curve widens as to what the actual median will be. The idea is that I believe that if we stick to the 1.5 degrees by the Paris Accord, which at this point we are not, then 3.5 meters will sort of be the final sea level rise. But that is, of course, there's some uncertainty in that. So that is something that I researched. I have been getting some feedback from my community as to the support for the project, and there is some support for the project. And then there are also voices that have some feedback that I have received that 3 million is a lot, and that we should maybe try to look at something with a more modest budget. So that's sort of the feedback I've been getting from my community. But yes, thank you for a great engagement session, and looking forward to some more answers around some of those designs and flood construction ideas.
Thank you, Director Ties. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm wondering about the next steps to assist staff with how to go through with this. And kind of for me, there's these two kind of themes. There's the building, the sustainability of the building through climate change and sea level rise, and then there's the service, and that's the one I keep coming back to. And Chair Director Seegers mentioned it. It's in the report. That's the operating plan. How is this thing going to operate now in the future? What are the costs? So what would staff need from the board to kind of, like, I'm not, for me, there's a whole bunch of unknowns about, in order to put the support behind it, what will we be supporting? What will I be supporting? And I really don't know how it's going to operate. The community association seems to think weddings and over 120 people, and that's how it's going to be funded, which is more of a regional center rather than a local community center. So these are the questions that I have. So what would staff need to get from us in order to go these next steps about getting some more knowns about kind of the business case, the operating plan, and that type of stuff?
I guess the question is, would staff like the committee to put forward a recommendation asking for more details about an operations plan and projected operating costs prior to round 2? Jim Hall.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Staff would welcome a motion like that. Staff would see those things as prerequisites to building. Whether or not they're fully built out prior to round 2, or whether proceeding with the project as incorporated in a financial plan, which might occur at round 2, is predicated on completion of those things before proceeding with tender. Staff, given that we're 2 weeks away from round 2, and staff take note of the need to, and would fully intend to, document thoroughly an operating agreement with a partner to inform some of those operating budget questions, and noting that takes time. Staff would appreciate and recommend that those steps be directed to occur before the project proceeds, but not necessarily prior to round 2. Thank you.
Thank you, GM Hall. And of course, there are going to be items that, we may not know until after the hall is constructed and operating, and what is the actual electrical usage going to be, and things like that. But Director Seegers.
Thank you. Again, in the survey on page 10 of our agenda, it looks at who responded to the engagement information. And I understand that the financial implication will impact every one of the electoral areas. So I like that Director Ties has indicated that he has been reaching out to his community, but I'm just hoping that all of the directors who are voting on this and putting information forward and taking on the whole project for their areas are reaching out and doing the same kind of consultation. I'm sure you are. I just haven't heard of that. And if I look at the responses that came in here, it was 85% were from Half Moon Bay. So very little response from the other community areas. And I know it's been in the newspaper. I don't know if your residents are actually aware of the financial impact to them.
Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'll follow up on what Director Seeger said. I haven't been engaging my community on this yet. With round 2 coming up, we've got a number of other things, you know, other balls in the air right now, but this is a regional function. And I do really feel that we need to have a full discussion of this project in the context of the other community halls that already exist and how they operate and what the costs are and who pays. I don't think that my constituents are really aware of this project or aware of the fact that it's regionally funded. So I do think this is a bigger conversation that we need to have. Not before round 2, though.
All right. Thank you, Director McMahon. I see no other hands up. Directors, is there anything you'd like to do in terms of a recommendation with this? Director McMahon.
When and in what form will this be coming back to the board as things stand right now?
You mean other than during round 2?
Yeah, other than during round 2.
GM Hall?
Thank you, Chair. I think you answered the question. So there is a, at least in part, there is a placeholder budget proposal included in the Service 650 Parks portion of the budget package, and so that can be updated following the engagement session at the end of January and taking into account the discussion today. I think to ensure that staff cover off everything that we would recommend be included as part of a decision on this project, if there's comfort on the part of the committee and barring any further direction from my staff colleagues, staff have been taking quite a few notes here. I think as we bring this back to round 2, staff could endeavor to include some recommendations that cover the additional work that would be required for us to feel comfortable moving this forward. So that would include a detailed operating plan. And so if there's any other areas of discussion that you would like for staff to take note of so that we bring helpful information to round 2, we're pleased to hear that now, but we'll take it as soft direction to prepare that information and bring it forward for your consideration in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Thank you, or at least as detailed as you can in 2 weeks' time. Director Ties?
Yeah, so just to reiterate, I think my biggest ask is just to figure out for the comfort of the board as to what the expected, or what the life expectancy of the building would be at whatever flood construction level is chosen. So that I think that's my biggest question. Other than that, the next question is budget and you know, how much do we want to burden our communities at this point?
Thank you, Director Ties. Director McMahon.
I just want to be really clear that I can't support building any facility that is not built to zero emission standards. There's no excuse for it at this point. So that has to be, as far as I'm concerned, a requirement. That's the only responsible thing we could possibly do. I also really would like to look at our policies around acquiring or building community halls, because we don't have any policies. We've never set them up. And I think we need to consider this. So that's my two concerns.
Thank you. Director Pratt.
Thank you, Chair Toth. Just to, seeing as we're doing some soft recommendations here, I would agree a little bit more information about the operating plan. And as Director Ty said, around the life expectancy. And because budget is a big concern, and as we know, the majority of the cost of any asset is through the lifetime of the asset. It is not in the initial capital outlay. So having that, we need to be very forward thinking about our community as a whole as we go forward. So generations beyond where we are right now and beyond our term, beyond it's that seven generational thinking, that First Nations seven generational thinking is what we really need to be planning for, and being and I would agree with Director McMahon about the zero emissions piece wherever we can, as close as possible. It's we need to, when we're putting assets in, we need to make sure that we are as prudent as possible and thinking about where we are right now, but also into the future and what impact, what footprint we're leaving on the land as we're moving forward. So so looking forward to the report at round 2 with the soft recommendations for GM Hall and his team. Thank you.
The notes that he's been furiously writing.
Yes.
Director Seegers.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate the parking and boat ramp. Thank you.
Parking especially is going to be a problem. And I did note that there was some comments from people about trailers and trying to navigate trailers in and out of that area. So Director McMahon.
Yeah, I agree with the parking problem. If you pave the entire park in order to park there, it kind of negates the purpose of having a park. But I just wanted to point out, as I think I have before, that we have 5 community halls right now. The smallest is 600 square feet. The largest is 1,200 square feet. And this one is 3,100 square feet. So it's nearly 3 times the size of the largest community hall we are currently operating. And I have to kind of wonder about that. You know, this is back to the policy question again, is what are these community halls for? What's the intention? And how are we designing them? What needs are we trying to meet? You know, the other community halls are not designed to accommodate weddings. Is this something that we want to get into the business of doing? So I really do want to have that discussion. So thanks.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Chair, we have some soft recommendations, but perhaps a hard recommendation such that staff report back at the round 2 with this information as an update. Might just be helpful, just as a record that we actually made a decision here. If that's with that, I'm not sure, such as staff will update the round 2 proposal based on this conversation, just as a that we actually did something here rather than just soft recommendations.
I can totally see reading back in minutes and seeing this conversation and wondering what happens, because our minutes are not so detailed as to outline what conversation occurred. Director McMahon, I saw you put your hand up real quick, but is it about building a motion here that something come forward? Okay, I'll go to you and then we'll look to staff to see if what they would like to see in a recommendation. Because I agree, we should have something coming out of this as a hard and fast, you know, update.
Yeah, I'm happy with staff reporting back to us on all of the issues we've raised, but I don't think they can get to all of them before round 2. So perhaps they can identify the issues raised during round 2, and then at round 2 we can decide on next steps.
GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. So what staff are hearing is that and a motion is welcomed here, I will say. But what staff are hearing is that additional information be brought to the round 2 budget process regarding building emissions, life expectancy, operating plan, parking next steps. And if there are other items to add to that list, directors will no doubt remind me. And then staff would take action on that to bring what information we can or to describe next steps in any of those areas as is possible on the timeline. Thank you.
Yeah, parking and boat ramp. Boat ramp was brought up a couple times. I think that covered everything off. Director McMahon.
And policy around community halls. We have no policy.
In time for round 2 budget, Director McMahon?
No, these were items being flagged to identify next steps. I didn't think we had to solve all these problems in 2 weeks.
Okay, Director Hiltz.
The policy piece would be the recreation master plan, which does have a small section on community halls about, is this a regional facility or a local facility? So perhaps staff's recommendation could wrap up how the recreation master plan applies to this facility as a policy direction. Because, you know, if it's flawed, but it is the only piece of policy we have on recreation facilities at this time.
Okay, thank you, Director Hiltz. I think I heard, you know, GM Hall's list of items, and then Director McMahon would like to address next steps on some sort of policy expansion as per the sorry, Director Hiltz, was it the Recreation Master Plan?
Yeah, I believe it's 2014, I think is the, yeah, Recreation Master Plan. It is a master of some plan, yes.
So is it some sort of expansion on our recreation hall policies? GM Hall, does that capture everything you don't want to try and sort out in 2 weeks?
Thank you, and it is helpful, Chair. Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is rural directors only. Would somebody like to make that motion? Moved, Director Pratt. Seconded by everybody else. Any other comments or questions? Seeing nothing, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All right, thank you very much. Is there anything else from this before we move on? Director Pratt?
I'd just like to remind the other directors about the Cooper's Green Park Management Plan, which is, I actually had a resident remind me about that yesterday, because there are other items within that plan as well, and that'll help if you can review or read it prior to going into round 2 for part of the questions that have come up and part of the discussion too. So I think it's a really good document to go back and remind ourselves about that, and it's really well written and with a lot of community, Half Moon Bay community feedback. So that I just wanted to flag that.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to Annex C, Pender Harbor Aquatic Society Agreement Renewal. We've got Adrian O'Donoghue.
Thank you, Chair. The SCRD has had an ongoing and valuable relationship with the Pender Harbor Aquatic Society since the establishment of Pender Harbor Recreation Service over 40 years ago. Staff have worked with the Society to update the agreement to reflect the current nature of the relationship. This report is to obtain SCRD board approval to renew the agreement for another 5-year term.
All right, thank you very much. This is rural directors again. Any questions from directors or motions from my rural directors? Director Lee.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendations on page 15 of our agenda.
Thank you, and I see that seconded. Any other comments or questions about it? Director Hiltz.
Thanks. It was just a comment, I guess. I'm supportive of the motion. It's as I learn about the regional district, I keep these unique arrangements that have been there from the past, and I had no idea that the Aquatic Society even existed as a nonprofit society that interfaced with the regional district staff. So it's just interesting to see all these different ways that we've come together to deliver services. So it's something I'm going to try to find out a little bit more about, because they had an AGM in December. So it's just another interesting thing to find out. So thank you.
All right, Director McMahon.
Yeah, kind of along the lines of Director Hiltz. This does beg the question to me of how the community is involved in our other recreation facilities. We did indeed at one time have a recreation committee that was disbanded. So in Pender, obviously there's a lot of direct community input into how the facilities operate, and that's not the case on the rest of the coast. And it leaves me wondering if we shouldn't have something like that for the other facilities.
Thank you, Director McMahon. It was pointed out to me that this shows on the agenda as A, B, D, E, and F, but given that this is a Pender Harbor Area A only item, the question is this voting all? And I don't know if our corporate officer can answer that immediately.
Staff can make the check quickly, Chair, but I believe that as this report was built, because it's an agreement binding the organization, it was all rural. But I will make the check.
We can all vote on it, and if we shouldn't have voted on it, it won't matter. It's only going to be if everybody opposes it that we've got a problem here. So, Director Pratt, I see you've unmuted yourself.
I was just going to comment that the rural directors have quorum here anyways, so if we choose to go forward, we do. So.
Okay, I see no further hands up. So I will call the question. Municipalities can vote on this anyways, and if we shouldn't have voted, then it just won't be counted. So all those in favor? All right, that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to Annex D, Seashell Aquatic Center Fire Sprinkler System Repair or Replacement. And this is being spoken to by Alan Van Velzen, Facility Services Coordinator.
Thank you, Chair Toth. As noted in the report, in December, staff discovered a leak in the fire sprinkler system at the Seashell Aquatic Center, which was associated with microbiologic growth inside the sprinkler piping that had caused corrosion of the piping, leading to premature failure of the piping. Based on investigations and expert advice, it is likely most of the system is in the same condition and requires replacement. This is unexpected and is in spite of diligent system maintenance. The fire sprinkler system undergoes annual inspection and maintenance by a certified fire sprinkler contractor. The annual maintenance of the wet system includes flow testing of valves, verification of fire alarm system interconnects, verification of system pressure, and a visual external inspection of accessible piping and sprinkler heads. Cross-connection devices are also tested annually. These devices are in place to ensure that in the event of a pressure drop in the municipal water system that supplies the fire sprinkler system, the stagnant water in the sprinkler system cannot flow back into the municipal water system. We are aware that this type of issue is not without precedent. It sometimes occurs in sprinkler systems. The staff report before you is the estimated cost to perform the investigative work to confirm the extent to which the system is compromised and to replace any compromised sections of the sprinkler system. Staff recommend proceeding with the investigative work based on the low cost but potentially high value if only a portion of the sprinkler system is compromised. A number of financial options have been explored as described in the report, and staff will bring forward a proposal with a recommended funding source as part of the round 2 budget. We also have CFO Tina Perot in the meeting today as a resource. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. And I see that we have questions. Director McMahon.
Seashell Pool had a number of deficiencies such that I believe the SCRD actually sought legal action against the construction company. Does the system meet the specifications that were supposed to be built to? And so is this a deficiency in the original building that is the result of negligence on the part of the builder, or can we tell that?
Good question. Staff?
The sprinkler system was not raised as part of the deficiencies in the original construction. And as far as we're aware, it does meet the design specifications.
We discussed this a little bit in agenda review because I thought this was going to be an issue that we sort of bogged down on a little bit going through the meeting. And my understanding from the agenda review conversation was that this is actually a fairly common problem with sprinkler systems. It's just the age, the speed at which this happened is the surprise. I believe I have that correct, GM Hall, from our conversation.
Well, I can't speak to how common it is. And I suppose building owners only find out about this when there's a problem, like when there's a leak, as we did. But it's not without precedent. That's for certain.
Yeah. Director Ties?
Yeah, so it looks like this needs to be done because otherwise there's no point in having the system there, and we need to have it. But I'm wondering if there's anything that staff will do in the future that could possibly prevent that from happening again. My thought was maybe regular flushing or something like that. But yeah, it's just, I'm wondering if there's some sort of lesson learned. And then the next question is also other facilities. What is going to be done in other SCRD facilities to either prevent this from happening or to make sure that it hasn't happened already?
Thank you, Director Ties. Go ahead, staff.
So I'll answer the second part of the question first. So based on our discovery and the condition of the system at the Seashell Aquatic Center, staff will look at if and how fire sprinkler systems at other SCRD facilities should be reviewed. To answer the first part of the question, we've recently had our fire plans updated, which are based on an updated fire code. And there is some requirements in the updated code for 5-year inspections, internal inspections of fire sprinkler systems, where a problem like this should be caught earlier on.
Okay. And then I think the other question was about are there any preventative maintenance measures that can be taken to mitigate or reduce this occurrence? You know, does flushing work, for example? Is that known?
That would be something that we would think, yes, but we'd be speculating at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Director Hiltz?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I guess when the preventative maintenance doesn't find a critical failure, it would suggest that the preventative maintenance isn't doing its task. So I'm looking forward to staff looking at that preventative maintenance. The place where it starts to broaden out for me, it's this facility, which relies on Chapman water. and it was noted in the report that the water source may be a problem with the sprinkler systems. Then we broaden that out to SCRD facilities. And then I go, do we broaden it out to every other facility that it relies on Chapman water in terms of a notice? You know, because looking at those pipes, I think that if that sprinkler system went on, there would not be a lot of water coming out of those sprinklers. So I'm wondering how far this goes. So I'm wondering about does the fire department need to get in terms of their inspection? Somehow, how does the fire departments know about this? They're expecting these things to work, and they go out there and they're going, "Hey, it doesn't work. Place burnt down." Because, you know, if I remember, the Seashell Fire Hall Improvement District is very strongly in supportive of sprinkling systems. And so it's a real concern that we got this huge problem that all the Chapman water is causing this microbiological induced corrosion. Is this a Sunshine Coast-wide problem? And how would we find out? Do we need to put out like a public service announcement that people need to be more attentive to their maintenance? So that is a question. Would this have saved the building? Would it have worked?
Thank you, Director Hiltz. Staff?
Chair, there's a few pieces there where I guess staff would want to say that there are sprinkler systems that are designed, installed, maintained to fire code and perform, unfortunately regularly, successfully. And that at this time, staff don't have any information to make a connection between our water, which also is carefully managed for quality on an ongoing basis, and this particular issue. And the water that's coming out of the water treatment plant and this particular issue, there's lots of factors in between that. We hope that through the investigation, as our facility services coordinator said, that we may learn a little more about underlying causes here and see if there's something we can do. But at this point, following required codes, following best practice for maintenance, and learning from things like this as we can is the best we can do, and it is our commitment as an organization serving the community with public facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Just my own note, knowing commercial property owners who have sprinkler systems installed, the piping and flow requirements for a commercial building are quite large, and every single building owner that's had to pay to put a sprinkler system in would tell you quite excessive, given that, in the event of a fire, you have one or two sprinkler heads that trigger and usually either extinguish the fire or keep it at bay until the fire department arrives to attack it. You don't, if you've got a 4-inch pipe, you're not getting 4 inches of water flow to run all your sprinkler heads all at the same time, and in the vast majority of building fires. And so, still seeing the wall through this pipe, obviously there would still be water flow, but anyways, just some observations from knowing other commercial building owners. Director McMahon?
Yeah, swimming pools are sort of, like human soup. They're warm biological environments with also lots of chemicals around. So I'm wondering if the swimming pool is a particularly challenging environment for infrastructure.
I mean, I would say that this was internal corrosion, and hopefully they're not piping pool water through the sprinkler system. But I don't know if our staff wanted to add anything to that.
It is a challenging atmosphere, and we do see some issues in small areas of the facility, particularly in chemical rooms, where we do see evidence of some external corrosion on the piping. But for the majority of the facility, we don't notice any external issues with the piping.
Thank you. Director Seegers?
Thank you. The comment was made, do we need to put out some kind of public announcement? I can assure you that the fire departments are probably following this very closely and will change up processes and ensure that people who have sprinkler systems will be aware of any kind of changes that need to be implemented to ensure that their buildings are protected. So I don't know if that's an area we need to get into. I can assure the fire departments will be on top of that.
All right. I see no further hands up. Director Hiltz.
Yeah, on the comment of what should the public know, what should the fire departments know, I would be interested to get some feedback from the fire departments, which are supported by SCRD, and to seek their expertise and perhaps report back to this committee on this subject of fire sprinklers. So I'd be prepared to put a motion to go together that SCRD writes to our local fire halls, inform them of the situation, and report back and seek comment and feedback from them. I would be interested in that. I'm not sure if this is the right time, but I'm thinking it's. I would hate to have to think that we didn't do anything and that there was a failure somewhere along the line, that this is sitting on my lap and I should do something about it. And I think the least is to let the fire halls know in a formal means. And I think from a due diligence, that would help me fulfill my role of oversight of this. So that's something just to inform them and seek comment and feedback from the fire departments or their fire safety officer or something like this.
Director Hiltz, rather than reporting back to this committee, I'm wondering if this would be a good topic to forward to a future public safety committee agenda, or invite them to attend and we can have a broader discussion with the fire department officials.
Sure, that's within. Yeah, I'm just wondering if, in terms of the size of the speed in which this needs to happen, and to wait for another month or two and to let it go through that whole. We're 2 or 3 or 4 months down the road, and for me, this is of sufficient seriousness that we have essentially possibly compromised fire sprinklers in facilities. That I think it's sufficiently high to step up the timeline on that.
Director Seegers.
Thank you. I notice in the report on page 22, it says that staff are working in coordination with Seashell Fire Department to ensure the building remains safe to occupy. So they have been called in. They know what's going on, and I think staff are working with them to make sure that they have all the information they need. And I mean, they're going to want to make sure that, yes, these buildings are safe for the public.
Director Kroll.
Thank you, Chair. Just sort of further to what Director Hiltz and Director Seegers were saying, I think it would be prudent just to flag the issue to the fire departments. Most of the commercial buildings in Gibson's, for most of their existence, have been on regional district water. And if it is a water issue, I certainly think the Gibson's Fire Department and possibly even the Roberts Creek Fire Departments should be made aware. So, in the short term, I think it would be prudent just to send a letter to the respective fire departments to make sure that they're aware of it.
Thank you, Director Kroll. Would somebody like to make a motion to some effect? Director Hiltz.
The motion could be just to refer this report to the non-seashell fire halls, like Gibson's and Roberts Creek. Yeah, I think that would make sense, that it's on the Chapman water system. So refer this report to the fire halls for consideration. The
Sunshine Coast fire halls, just so we're not,
Yeah, it's probably best to let everyone know rather than just be selective. Yeah. Seashell already knows about it, but yeah.
Okay.
Let the refer this report to the fire halls. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I did see a seconder for that. All right, that's seconded. Is there any further conversation on that? Sorry, I lost my page here. There we go. Then I'll call the question on that motion. All those in favor? Thank you. We do still have a recommendation here to deal with. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I'll make the recommendation on page 21.
All right, and I see a seconder for that. Any further conversation Questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? All right, that's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you to staff for bringing this forward. Director Pratt.
I'm just wondering, first, does staff need any direction on whether or not they want option one, or whether or not we want option 1 or option 2 as described on page 23 and 24, or option 3, I guess, too? Because there's also 3 different options for funding. Does staff need direction on that point at this time, or will that just come through at round 2?
Thank you for that question. My assumption was that this would be coming forward at round 2 for us to pick an option on, but I don't know if staff want to weigh in. Did they want more specific direction at this time, or wait till round 2? GM.
I can see the CFO looking at me, wondering who's gonna jump in first, Chair. If the committee has direction they would like to provide at this time, it's welcomed, but a funding source decision will be required at round 2, and staff can bring forward information to assist with decision at that time. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Director Pratt, does that?
I think that's sufficient, unless staff would request more direction at this time. I think we can have this as a further discussion at round 2. But if they require additional direction from us, I'm happy to do that now too. I just didn't want to lose it just in case they needed the direction at this time.
It sounds like we are okay as is, and we will be making a harder decision on it at round 2. So, all right, thank you very much. Annex E, statutory right-of-way, Bridgman Road, Soames Hill Park. Mr. Clarkson, are you speaking to this?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. BC Hydro has proposed a statutory right-of-way agreement with SCRD in order to run aerial hydro lines over or through a small portion of Soames Hill Park. The right-of-way and line extension is currently planned to service a single developed private property. Future residential tie-ins to service are anticipated, and the subdivision at the end of Bridgman, as a subdivision at the end of Bridgman Road is developed. Entering into a right-of-way agreement with BC Hydro provides the developer the ability to service lots in the most unobtrusive way possible and available. This proposed location for the aerial utility lines allows SCRD to retain an important vegetation buffer adjacent to a long section of parkland that abuts the terminus of Bridgman Road. Staff recommend that the delegated authorities be authorized to enter into a statutory right-of-way agreement with BC Hydro. This option is most likely to have the minimum adverse effect on the park, its aesthetics and the environment, as well as the potential impacts to park's users. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Directors, any questions, comments, recommendations? Director McMahon.
Oh, I'll give way to Director from Area F.
Director Hiltz.
Aye. Yes. Yeah. Thanks for the report. It seems quite reasonable. I'm not an expert on primary wire, so I'm going to accept that the experts have given the best advice. And thanks for the tip about the subdivision. People have been wondering what's going on there, so that's news. And so I'd be happy to move the motions or the recommendation as per page 34.
Thank you very much. And I see a seconder for that. This is voting A, B, D, E, and F as it is community parks. I see no further hands up, so I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. All right, moving on. Annex F, Union of BC Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, and that's as far as I'm reading on that title. Who is going to speak to this? Mr. Missouriak.
Thank you, Chair Toth. Currently, there is a grant funding opportunity from the province to fully fund the downstream flood analysis for the Chapman, Edwards, and McNeil Lake dams in the amount of $143,000. The purpose of this report is to provide you with the information about the grant application and to seek your support for staff to proceed with the preparation of the grant application at this time, along with your support for staff to formally submit the grant application at the February 25th board meeting. It should be noted that the application due date is February 26th, and a decision on a successful grant applications is anticipated to be made no later than May 27th. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. Director Ties?
Yeah, just confirming, I assume that the grant funding is mostly because it's going to be done by a consultant and just managed by staff. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right, thank you. Director McMahon.
Okay, I'm going to ask one of those slightly off-topic questions, but this got me wondering about other dams on the Sunshine Coast and what our role is. Like, if we're not the dam owner, we're clearly not responsible for it. But if one of the dams were to break and cause a disaster, then as the emergency operations center, we would care about that a good deal. So that led me to wonder about Dam 7 or Lake 7 Dam on Rainy River. And I was wondering if I went on the BC Dams website to try and find more information. And I found that they were going to fix the dam, which was leaking, but there's no follow-up on that. So is there a public need to know about this, and how do we find out?
I see GM Rosenboom has raised his hand almost as soon as you started going down that path. So I assume he would like to speak to this.
Thank you for the opportunity. It is ultimately, yes, all the dams on the coast are regulated by the same regulation as we're regulated by. So all those dams should have emergency plans, should have had downstream flood analysis being completed to assess any risk to any downstream users, property owners, etc., etc. It's up to the province to confirm the rate of compliance of all those dams with those with the regulation. It's also not a well-known secret that the dam safety program province-wise is understaffed, and hence there are a significant amount of dams in the province, including until very recently our own that were not 100% meeting all the requirements. So yes, we have a role there to play in terms of if an EOC, if a dam breach were to happen, that we would have to be activated. However, it's up to the province to make sure that those risks are acceptable. And if something were to occur, I think there is some discussion to be held about liability as well from the province side.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
So presumably when our emergency plan is updated, it will include that kind of information though, because Lake 7 Dam is not mentioned. In fact, Chapman Dam is not mentioned in our old emergency plan for the Sunshine Coast. So hopefully this is going to get addressed somewhere down the road.
Everybody's bouncing around here. Sorry, GM Rosenboom, you're unmuted.
Yeah. Dams should be included in our emergency preparedness approach, correct? If they are ours or not, shouldn't make a difference.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the report. It seems like a perfect fit. So essentially, we took the original project and split it into two portions. So one was grant funded. Well, maybe the other one could get grant funding too. But that's essentially what we're doing, is splitting the original project into the dams, and then the floodplain is more of a desktop exercise. Then it's not a lot of field work and no infrastructure. Is that how it kind of ends up?
The desktop study is pretty in depth, because I actually do a downstream analysis and survey of, what's downstream of the dam. One of the things to be aware of on this grant application is there's a larger grant application in the future that eligible projects could be reimbursed up to $750,000 for the actual dam safety improvements. And we can look at that later on in 2021 as we go into 2022 for the opportunities with that grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
I'd be happy to move the recommendations on page 45.
Okay, and I see a seconder for those. That's voting A, B, D, E, F, seashell, and SIGD. Sorry, Director Kroll, you got to sit this one out. Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any, so I will call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to our minutes. We've got Annex G, which is policing and public safety. Is there anything in there that needed to be addressed or further discussion on? Director Seegers.
I just want to remind directors about the March 1st submissions that our staff sergeant is looking for the RCMP for policing priorities.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands. Moving on to annexes H and I, which are APC minutes. Is there anything from either of those that anybody would like to flag? No? Okay. Moving on to Annex J, we have Telus Telecommunication Tower in Madeira Park, request for local government concurrence. Mr. Seau, are you speaking to this, or is somebody else speaking to this?
Thanks for the question, Chair. And Yuli, you can go ahead with an intro if you like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. It's possible we're having some IT challenges here. Yuli, if you're able to hear me, you can unmute yourself and introduce Annex J, please. And if not, perhaps, oh, there we go.
There we go.
Chair, there's a representative.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you, Chair. So Annex J is item 11. Okay, so this is a request by Telus to provide local government land use concurrence on a proposed 60-meter tall telecommunication tower to be located at 13121 Sunshine Coast Highway in Madeira Park. So the purpose of the new facility is to improve wireless communication and rural internet service to residents, business, and tourists in Madeira Park and along the Sunshine Coast Highway. So Telus has conducted the required consultation with the public and received no comments from the members of the public. So staff considered the proposed facility appropriate for the location and consistent with SCRD policies, and recommend providing concurrence to the federal agency regarding this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know that this is a notoriously bad spot on the highway for cell coverage, so this is good news. Directors, any questions, comments, recommendations? Director Hiltz.
Yeah, I would just like to say thanks for staff for taking the Telus recommendations and making them more concise. So yeah, it was a nice improvement from the longest of the Telus requirements to a SCRD based resolution. So thank you for that. And I'm happy to move it, but I'll let Director Lee move it.
Director Lee. You're muted, Director Lee.
I was almost finished too. I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendations as given to us on page 57 of our report.
All right. Is there I see seconders. Thank you very much. This is voting A, B, D, E, and F as it's rural planning. Any other questions, comments from directors? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. When I asked for a motion to receive at the beginning of the meeting, I totally forgot to include the correspondence. So can I have a motion to receive the items of correspondence? Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Annex K or Annex L, is there anything from either of those that directors would like to flag or discuss? Director Ties.
Yeah, I'm happy to see the climate leadership plan in draft form coming onto our agenda, and I'm looking forward to the new staff that's being added this year that will hopefully be able to take such information and start creating some staff reports as to what we can action out of this. So I think this is a future work. I think it could be just one more file that could be piled on top of that desk of that new person.
Thank you, Director Ties. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's an interesting plan to look through 30 goals. There seems to be a lot of overlap with the UN sustainability goals, which I'd be interested if someone knows about that connection. The one thing that kind of struck me about it is that the SCRD is already doing some of these things, but we don't, it's the monitoring and keeping up to date in this idea of having one universal place where we can put all this stuff. So does anyone know kind of the connection to the UN sustainability goals, and is the province, like I'm thinking about CARIP or CARIP, how we monitor the changes, and that seems to be one of these issues in this report is we talk, but how do we measure this? You can't manage what you don't measure, that idea. So where is there any movement to the central repository of being able to monitor what we're doing? Is this intended to be provincial or local government, or does anyone have any idea at this point on those? How are we going to put this all together, I guess?
Director McMahon, I see your hand up.
All I can comment on is that the UN goals were not specifically in mind when this was developed. This was the outcome of the conference that was held back in November, I believe. And there's a lot of worthy goals in here. As usual, a number of them are outside the jurisdiction of regional districts. And a number of them are also very much aimed at Vancouver Island, because things around their transportation infrastructure, for instance, makes sense in that context. But I still hope we can get some value out of this.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I noticed the document is marked working draft. So what are next steps with this group that have gone together? Are they looking at finalizing something? Are they looking for input? Where does this go from this step with that organization?
Director McMahon.
That's an excellent question, but I'm assuming that it will be on the agenda at AVICC because this is, of course, a working committee of AVICC, and I believe it needs the approval of AVICC.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else directors would like to flag or discuss? Looking at Annex L, the letter from Skiva about pre-wiring in new construction, or at least pre-conduiting in new construction. I know that we received this at the District of Seashell as well, and I think we referred it to our building department for them to consider as part of their regular updates. So I don't know if the SCRD staff need a motion to refer this to the building department for consideration, or whether it would just automatically form part of their working consideration. GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Staff would welcome a motion if there's work requested here. Thank you.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
I'd be happy to make that motion to refer it to planning, building department.
To staff as appropriate?
To staff as appropriate. Oh, that's lovely. I'll do that.
And I see seconders for that, so that's on the floor. Any other conversation or questions? Director Hiltz?
Yeah, thanks. It's the correspondence is under the Sunshine Coast EVA Association, and looking around, I don't own an EVA, and most of them seem to have part of their mandate is climate change and things like this. That is the reason for their existence. So the seashell one seems to be kind of unique in that it's about advocacy for the vehicles. So. Does anyone know if they have kind of a climate lens on their association, or is it just like everyone needs an EV and this is what their mandate is? It was just interesting that seems to be where some of the associations come from. It's a climate change and greenhouse gas mitigation, and EVs are one of those terms, versus just having an EV just for the sake of having an EV. So does anyone have any background on the association, or have they ever done a presentation to the SCRD in terms of like their perspective? Like I can't remember.
As an organization, they're fairly new, so I don't recall seeing them as an actual delegation either here or at the District of Seashell. I know that I should say I'm a member because I own an electric vehicle. I don't know if Director Ties is as well, but they're happy to talk. They're happy to answer questions. If we wanted to invite them to be a delegation, I'm sure they would be happy to do that. It's around, the climate change lens, but a lot of it is, cost of ownership and cost of maintenance on an electric vehicle is lower. They're good for the environment. They're good for the wallet. Yeah. So that's all I'm going to say on their behalf, unless Director Hiltz, you want to invite them to be a future delegation.
They are the only EV association on the coast, I believe, so they represent that. I'd be happy to find out more information about them, and yeah, sure, I'd make a motion to invite them to a future appropriate committee to tell us about their vision of EVs and how the Sunshine Coast fits into that. Sure, I'd be more than happy to listen to that. So that is a motion, I guess.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Seconded. All right. Any other questions, comments on inviting them to a future committee meeting? All those in favor? All right, that's carried. Thank you very much. Assuming there is nothing else from that, then that concludes our regularly scheduled agenda. We do have an in-camera section, so I'm looking for a motion that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with Section 90, 1M of the Community Charter, a matter that under another enactment is such that the public may be excluded from the meeting. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Okay, thank you very much. And just before we do that, do we have any questions from our gallery? I see no hands up. Shall we do we want to take 5 minutes before we reconvene? So we'll come back at 11 o'clock to go in camera. Okay, thank you very much. And welcome back to our regularly scheduled Planning and Community Development Committee meeting for Thursday, February 18th. We have no additional items of business on our agenda, so I will look for a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded, all those in favor. Thank you very much, and we'll see you all later.
Wow.